At exactly 4:14 a.m. at the port of Novorossiysk, a Russian sailor stands on the deck of a $470 million improved Kilo-class submarine, calm and careless, with no idea that death is floating less than 3 feet from the hull. In just 30 seconds, a normal night watch turns into a disaster that leaves the Russian Black Sea fleet shaken and stuck. But Russia's real mistake was not simply getting hit. The real mistake was stepping into a trap the SBU had been building months in advance, piece by piece, like a machine that only needed one final button press. The SBU understood one brutal truth. As long as the IL-38N Sea Dragon was still flying, any maritime drone would become a $50,000 paperweight. That aircraft was the eye in the sky. If Ukraine wanted the submarine, they had to blind the Sea Dragon first. So here's the question. If you were running this mission, how would you take down a Sea Dragon before you send the Sea Drones? Because the math of what happens next is a lesson in strategic destruction, the kind of return on investment that makes the best deal on Wall Street look tiny. It starts hours earlier at 11 p.m. on a hidden airstrip deep inside Ukraine. A Beaver drone rolls down the rough runway and lifts into the freezing dark. This is one of Ukraine's top deep strike tools, and the moment it leaves the ground, the flight computer forces a hard dive, leveling off at an almost insane height of only 150 feet. This is a nap of the Earth flying at its most extreme. At that altitude, the drone is hiding behind the curve of the Earth and the tree lines, staying invisible to long-range S-400 search radars scanning from Crimea. Inside the drone, the communications modules are dead on purpose. No Starlink, no radio control, no video feed, nothing. Because the second it transmits, Russian electronic warfare sensors would spot it like a flare in a black room. So instead of talking, the Beaver flies in silence, fully autonomous, guided by military-grade anti-jamming GPS paired with a high-precision laser ring gyroscope. It knows where it is, and more importantly, it knows exactly where it is going. For 3 hours, the drone slices through the cold air and ghosts past Russian air defense zones, hitting waypoints with machine-level accuracy and correcting for wind drift every moment. As it crosses the final outer ring near Yeysk Air Base, the airwaves stay quiet. No sirens, no frantic calls. The modified Beaver arrives, and the bouncer does not even look up. The trap is set. At 1:47 a.m., just 3 miles from the runway threshold, the Beaver has to make a small altitude change to clear power cables. It climbs to 200 feet. That extra 50 feet is the kind of mistake that gets you killed. On the edge of the tarmac, the spinning search radar of a Pantsir S1 catches a flicker. Normally, the Beaver's composite body is nearly invisible to radar, but at this close range, the spinning wooden propeller creates a tiny micro-Doppler pattern the Russian software recognizes instantly. The radar screen in the command vehicle flips from calm green to violent flashing red. The base wakes up with a mechanical scream. Klaxon sirens howl across the airfield, ripping through the cold silence. The Pantsir reacts faster than any human can think. Its turret snaps, slewing 90 degrees in less than a second, aiming its dual 30mm cannons and missile tubes straight into the incoming dark. The alert spreads across the secure network immediately, and now the shockwave hits the harbor too. 300 miles away in Novorossiysk, the red phone rings in the harbor command center, and the sleepy garrison gets slammed into full condition red. Searchlights snap on and sweep the black water. Raptor patrol boats roar to life and churn the surface into white froth. Shore sonar crews crank gain knobs all the way up, flooding the underwater channel with energy. To the Russians, this looks like a messy amateur attempt by Ukraine to score a quick PR win, and they think they caught it early. The Pantsir operator flips the safety cover off the launch control. Fire control radar gets a clean lock tone. To the outside world, it looks like Ukraine just lost everything. Surprise is dead. The drone is about to be vaporized, and the harbor defenses are now fully awake. It looks like a catastrophe. But here is the detail almost everyone misses. Right as the Pantsir operator commits to the shot, the Beaver does not dive into the ground and it does not slam into the hangars. Instead, it holds altitude and flies straight and steady, exactly 50 feet above the stationary IL-38N Sea Dragon parked on the hard stand. Then the SBU operator sends the code. The warhead inside the Beaver is not built like a normal bomb. It functions like a claymore pointed downward, a directional air burst charge. Physics takes over with terrifying precision. A split second later, the Pantsir missile hits the Beaver and turns it into a fireball, but Russia is fighting a ghost because the payload has already left the drone. On the ground, it is surgical violence. The tungsten hail shreds the top of the IL-38N, punching through the delicate redone on its spine and destroying the anti-submarine sensor suite. The fragments keep cutting downward, slicing fuselage metal, severing lines, and turning cockpit systems into sparking ruin. A Russian pilot sprinting toward the plane skids to a stop and watches fuel start leaking from torn wings. In under 5 seconds, Ukraine blinds the Russian Black Sea fleet. The $24 million eye in the sky is legally dead. The Black Sea air picture is now wide open, and the only thing standing between the harbor and the underwater assassins is gone. Now we jump to 2:15 a.m., and the celebration in Kiev lasts about 10 seconds, because the destruction of the IL-38N was a tactical win, but it triggers a strategic nightmare. With their eye in the sky gone, the Russian command in Novorossiysk realizes the harbor is exposed. The base commander does not simply raise the alert level, he goes scorched earth, seal the harbor, now. At the entrance, tugboats begin pushing old barges into the main channel. At the same time, the underwater acoustic environment turns from a quiet library into a heavy metal concert. Every shore sonar array is cranked to maximum active power. High-frequency pings saturate the water, bouncing off rocks, fish, and hulls. Raptor patrol boats cut aggressive figure eights. Crews toss random stun grenades into the water, hoping to crush any incoming divers or drones. Sailors line the piers with thermal scopes and manpads, scanning the dark waves for a single ripple. This is the moment the Sea Baby drones are approaching the outer perimeter, and in Kiev, the operator's face drains as telemetry shows the underwater interference spiking off the charts. The harbor has become a sensory kill box. The mission commander's voice tightens. "We cannot go in. Sonar density is too high. If we run the motors even at 10%, they will hear cavitation instantly." The operator stares down at his hands. They are shaking. Months of planning, millions in development, and the sacrifice of the IL-38N strike, all of it is hanging by a thread. The drones are sitting 2 miles out and the door is slamming shut. They have one shot and the odds just went from hard to suicidal. At 2:35 a.m., the Russians are hunting for a fight. They are listening for high-speed propellers, electric motor hum, and the cavitation of machines trying to force their way in. So Ukraine does not give them a fight. Ukraine gives them silence. The drones kill their motors. Active guidance goes to sleep. To electronic sensors, they effectively stop existing. And here is the genius of the plan. Russia has filled the harbor with so much active sonar noise that it becomes a roaring background wall. By trying to hear everything, they make it harder to hear the quietest thing. The drones are now drifting, no longer like weapons, more like 1,000-pound logs. Physics becomes the pilot. The natural tidal current of the Black Sea flows into the harbor at about 2 knots, and the drones ride that invisible conveyor belt. They drift in the dark at the same speed as the surrounding water, slipping past frantic patrol boats. Sonar operators, blinded by their own clutter, filter slow-moving contacts as trash, driftwood, or dead fish. The drones approach the boom nets. These barriers are designed to stop surface threats, but they leave a gap near the muddy seabed to allow tidal flow. The drones, ballasted to neutral buoyancy and riding inches off the bottom, slide under the heavy steel mesh like smoke under a door. Inside the harbor, the water is calmer, and then the shape appears. The massive black body of the Kilo-class submarine blocks out what little surface light exists. A sleeping monster, unaware that parasites are already underneath it. In Kiev, the room goes dead silent. Telemetry ticks down slowly and cruelly. 100 feet, 80, 50. Through the low-light camera, the operator can see the submarine's 7-bladed propeller. Huge, still, exposed. His thumb hovers near the trigger guard. The target fills the screen, and now he has 2 kill choices. Option A is the safe disable. Hit the stern, destroy the propeller, the rudder, and the shaft seals. The submarine floods and sinks, but the damage stays more contained. Option B is the gamble. Hit amidships, target the forward tubes loaded with caliber cruise missiles. The first blast might be smaller, but if it cooks off those missiles, the secondary detonation can erase the entire pier. So here is the question for you. If you are holding that joystick, what do you choose? The guaranteed disable or the high-risk, high-reward total wipeout? Drop your answer in the comments and I will pin the most tactical one. Because what happens next does not just sink a ship, it shakes Moscow. Then the detonate order is given. Far away in Kiev, the SBU mission commander leans into the microphone and says one cold word: detonate. 2,000 miles away, deep in the mud of Novorossiysk harbor, the logic boards inside the Sea Baby drones process the command in milliseconds. The electric motors kick one last time, a final shove to press the warheads hard against the submarine's steel skin, and then then, the world turns white. Both drones detonate at the same moment directly under the submarine's stern. This is not a Hollywood fireball. This is a physics event. 1,000 pounds of high-grade explosive becomes superheated gas instantly, and water, being incompressible, refuses to move away, acting like a concrete anvil that forces nearly all the force upward. On the surface, the pier jumps. A geyser of mud and white foam launches hundreds of feet into the air, towering over cranes. The sound arrives a fraction later, a deep, wet crack that shatters windows miles away. But the real destruction happens after the flash. This is where the engineering shows. The warheads do not simply explode on contact, they use a tiny programmable delay. If they detonate too early, much of the energy wastes itself pushing water. By delaying until the charge is effectively pressed and tamped against the hull, the blast creates a water hammer effect. A pressure wave punches into the submarine's outer hull and slams into the inner pressure hull. Because the blast is from below, the shock enters the steel tube and gets trapped, bouncing off internal bulkheads and amplifying itself. The result is structural failure. The massive rudder snaps off like dry wood. The propeller shaft, thick enough to carry insane loads, is twisted violently out of alignment. Watertight seals shred. The stern does not just leak, it breaks apart. The Black Sea floods into compartments with brutal force, and the pier explodes into chaos as sailors, deafened and stunned, run in confusion while officers scream over claxons. Damage control teams rush pumps and hoses to the dock edge, but it is like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon. Buoyancy is no longer their friend. The submarine begins to groan with twisting metal. The stern drops. The bow lifts. The vessel lists hard to starboard. The so-called unsinkable missile carrier is now dead in the water, flooded with salt water and toxic systems. 24 hours later, high-resolution commercial satellite images confirm the humiliation. The submarine is resting on the harbor bottom, the conning tower barely breaking the surface at a sick angle, and the photos reveal the final irony. In panic after the blast, Russians scuttle even more barges across the harbor entrance to stop further attacks. In doing so, they trap their own remaining fleet inside. They accomplish what Ukraine could not do by force. They lock themselves in. The Black Sea Fleet is no longer acting like a navy. It is a prisoner in its own home. By killing the IL-38N Sea Dragon at the airbase and crippling the Kilo-class submarine at the pier inside the same 24-hour window, Ukraine blinds and neuters the Black Sea Fleet at the same time. The remaining ships freeze, patrols stop, logistics vessels refuse to enter, fearing invisible mines or drones. For the next 96 hours, the entire supply chain locks up. On the front lines, the effect hits fast. Units that rely on those supply lines start rationing. Ukraine gains momentum while Russia's rear guard burns time chasing ghosts in its own harbor. But the worst damage is not steel, it is psychological. Russian commanders are no longer planning bold moves. They are fighting paranoia. Every ripple looks like a sea baby. Every bird on radar looks like a beaver. Meetings get shorter. Sleep gets worse. Money gets thrown at defenses that still do not solve the core problem. The fear of an invisible drone becomes a weapon more powerful than the explosive itself. So tell me, are you satisfied with that level of destruction? Hit like if you support the underdog rewriting the rules of war. And here is a question for the tech geeks. Which piece impressed you more? The airburst strike that blinded the fleet, or the silent underwater assassin that drifted in on the current? Type AIR or water in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next deep dive. Glory to the heroes. See you in the next breakdown.